Hi everyone, am I audible? So Sharath, would you be able to respond to me?
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay, but your voice is a little breaking, Sharath. Can you speak something?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, okay, a little better. Okay. So hi, welcome to all of you. As I'm seeing that we have some of our coaches who have joined and some people who have joined maybe as coaches and maybe not from us, that's all right. So welcome to this series of webinars to our wonderful coaches. And today we have Sharath with us, as you can see him on the screen. I met him. He's one of the MG25 coaches, which means he's a Marshall Goldsmith coach, and so I am. So I met him there. And sometimes when you meet people, you can just strike a chord with them, and it can only happen. At least for me, that is very true. It can only happen with me for the people who work from the heart. And when I talked to him, it was in the beginning, I think it was very few, hardly few talk. But then I think one evening when we were sitting with Marshall and we ended the session, and then that's the time I talked to him, and we kind of understood each other. And he was a CEO of one of the investment banks, and now on his own. Not I don't know much details about his profession, but as a human being, he's a wonderful human being who is following his passion, and he's a wonderful shooter. Am I right? You're learning shooting, right, Sharath? You have to unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Sharath, can you unmute? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm learning shooting.
So,
Just quickly.
he's a wonderful shooter, a very beautiful wife. I met her. She came to Bombay during his session, and I think a person who works from the heart. And I think they are the people who come across us. And as a human being, he's been helping many people. He's been coaching leaders. He's been helping, I think, the young people as well. So for me, he's I think a very good friend as well, probably whom you can share things with and who will, as a coach, would really keep it to himself, right? So we have a session today, which is Leaders as Coaches for a Brighter Future. So we'll follow the format that he is going to give a presentation. We will run the PPT. And if you have any questions, kindly put it in the chat box. If somebody in between, please do not speak. So whatever questions you have, put them there. Then we have Prosperity as one of our team members. You can see her on the screen. Prosperity, can you say hi to all? Okay. So she will pick up the questions and she will give it to Sharath, and then Sharath will be able to answer the questions. We will try our best to answer them. In case something is left over, we'll give you the support ID. Just send it across to us. Whatever best we can do, we'll definitely do for you. So over to Sharath. Thank you so much for accepting this, and Sharath, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Firstly, thanks a lot to the Innermost Shift team, especially Prosperity, who has helped coordinate this webinar and also giving me the opportunity to speak to all of you. And it's a Friday evening. Obviously, if it was not for COVID, we would have all been partying. And because we can't party anyway, we'll probably go and do some of these webinars. So hopefully I'll make it worthwhile for all of you that you don't miss your party on a Friday. With that, I'd like to jump into talking about, today's session. So, you know, the topic for today is about leaders and how leaders can become more effective by thinking and acting as coaches. Because that's the topic, we'll start off by briefly talking about various leadership styles as defined by Daniel Goleman in one of his books called The Leadership That Gets Results, which was published, I guess, in the year 2000. Obviously, some of you come from coaching background and HR backgrounds, so some of you might be aware of it and some might not be coming. So I'll just briefly skim over that. And then we'll spend some time on seeing how expectations from leaders and hence how leadership styles changed and evolved over time. And I'll use the Industrial Revolution as the backdrop for talking about this evolution. And then finally, we'll spend some time on the significant changes in the digital age, what that means to the current day leaders, and why leaders as coaches is the way forward. Okay. as you can see from the table, you know, Daniel Coleman, after doing an extensive research across various organizations and all of that, came to the conclusion that there are about 6 leadership styles, each of which has a modus operandi and have key underlying emotional intelligence competencies. And each of the style works best in certain particular situations. He also suggested the overall impact of the style being positive or negative on the broader organization over time. So you can look through the details in the slides, but in summary, commanding leaders are people who demand immediate compliance and basically want you to do as told. Pace setting leaders set high performance standards and want you to do as he or she as the leader does, and more often than not now immediately. Vision setting leaders are people who mobilize people towards a vision by inspiring them to join the vision. And for affiliative leaders, people come first and they are good at creating harmony, creating emotional bonds, etc. For democratic leaders, it's all about forging, consensus, building collaboration with people, driving large teams, etc. And finally, leaders who act as coaches or leaders as coaches are more keen on developing people for the future by tapping their true inner potential. So those are the 6 high-level leadership styles. And we'll try and again, we'll be referring to some of these leadership styles. So I thought it makes sense for us to go through this. So let's jump into looking at how, the evolution of leadership and leadership expectations changed over time. So the first industrial revolution, probably starting in the 18th century, created machines to replace manual labor and gave us, things like the steam engine, the water power, etc., which actually ensured that plants were designed to maximize the flow of production for standardized engines and machines. So this mechanization was the reason why agriculture started to be replaced by the industry as becoming the backbone of the economy. During this time, jobs were broken down into specialized or specific operations with appropriate specialization of labor. Following the first industrial revolution, again, almost a century later, the second industrial revolution came in. It started at the end of 19th century with massive technological advancements in the field of industries, and the emergence of, again, new sources of energy, being electricity, gas, oil, etc. So the result of this, So the result of this revolution was the creation of the, internal combustion engine, and other important things also happened during the second industrial revolution, which were like development of steel, chemical synthesis. But the more important ones were around modes of communications, such as the telegraph and the telephone. And finally, this was also the period when automobile and aeroplanes, etc., started becoming the biggest reason why second industrial revolution is still remembered by all of us. So given this backdrop of industrial revolution, first industrial and second industrial revolution, where it was all about specialization of labor, how do you get things done? Most people during this period began successful careers by developing expertise in core technical and functional competencies. Doing one's job well meant having the right answers. If one could prove, oneself that way, one would rise up the ladder and become a manager. And what was manager's job? Managers knew what needed to be done, taught others how to do it, and evaluated people's performance based on that. So effectively, it was all a command and control, being the name of the game. And the primary goal of the managers was to assert authority and direct employees who also understood how the business worked and were able to reproduce its previous successes. So during this period, most organizations, be it government, public, private, be it in the space of engineering, medical, manufacturing, education, and for all I know, probably even in politics, uh, you know, the organizations were primarily hierarchical systems where senior management would define the long-term goals and targets for the organization, and the rest of the team, through command and control structures, used to get things executed. During this period of first and second industrial revolution, even the organizational management and leadership was influenced by various thinkers and studies, like by Daniel McCallum in 1984, who came up, I think, with the first organizational charts concept. People like Edgar Thompson developed the line and staff management and the concept of divisional organization. Then there was Frederick Taylor in 1911, came up with the principles of scientific management. Then there was Elton Mayo, who came up with an article called the Human Problems of Industrial Civilization, etc., etc. And during this period, given the type of expectations from the leaders, the primary leadership styles were, commanding and pace setting, were very, very important to get the work done. Obviously, visionary leadership style was important, but that was probably left to a very, very senior management level. And then, again, there was probably a bit of affiliative and democratic styles, but, again, this was probably confined to the senior management level. Then came, again, a century later, the third industrial revolution. In the second half of about the 20th century, we saw the emergence of yet another untapped energy source, which was nuclear energy. The third revolution also brought forth most important things, which were the rise of electronics, telecommunications, and of course, computers. All of these technological developments led to increased globalization, distributed of workforce across various regions, etc. And then there were also, major, I would say, inventions like what are called as programmable logical interface. Okay, and excuse me for suddenly becoming an engineer here, which is what my background is. But hey, there are things like PLCs and robots and things like that came, which actually started, giving rise to an era of high level of automation. So through these new technologies, the third industrial revolution opened the doors, even for, opened the doors for space expeditions, biotechnology, a lot of research and development. And during this period, the main things that were expected of the leaders, because of the, constantly changing technological things, was redefining goals as to cope up with the rapid technology changes. Then, as I was saying earlier, with the telecommunications, electronics, and all of these coming, workforce started getting distributed physically across various locations, be it within the country or globally, and hence managing a very physically spread out and distributed workforce was another leadership challenge. And then finally, with, again, things, the technological advancements and constant automation and all of that, it was very important for leadership to start looking at how they'll upskill the people to redeploy them for, other productive uses. So hence, during this time, the command and pace settings style of leaderships became less and less effective. Obviously, to take care of rapidly changing technologies, the visionary leadership gained more importance, and with distributed workforce and all of that, the affiliative and democratic lifestyles, the leadership styles started becoming more important, not just at the senior management level, but coming down to various levels of the organization. And during this period, the organizational and leadership and was influenced by various thinkers, obviously. But we already spoke about Daniel Goleman's 6 leadership styles. This also came during this period. He also wrote a very great book called Emotional Intelligence with the same title, and where he thought that EQ might be more important than IQ. But one very important finding that I would like to speak is actually called the Peter Principle. It's an interesting principle that he came up with, which is, it states basically that in a hierarchy, each employee rises to their level of incompetence. And those of you who are hearing for the first time, please, listen to this quite interesting one, which is, in every organization, everyone wins a promotion or two, moving from one level of competence to a higher level of competence. So competence in the new position qualifies one for still another promotion. So for every individual, this chain of, moving from one level to another level, from one position to another position, keeps on continuing till the person is performing well. And once the person stops performing well, the person stops. And technically what that means is the person is at a post where he is incompetent or she is incompetent. So the principle says that if you give enough time, and assuming that there is existence of enough ranks in the hierarchy, every employee rises to and remains at his or her level of incompetence. So, Peter's principle effectively, in summary, is in time, every post tends to be occupied by an employee who is incompetent to carry out his or her duties in that role. Sorry. So this is a very important finding, I believe, of that period, because it came at a very important time. The realization that organizations had a high possibility of every post being occupied by someone who once was competent but is now incompetent, started people to think about hierarchical systems and how people are progressing in these systems, and started people also started thinking about whether hierarchical systems need to be relooked at in the future. And this understanding was also very key, because this was also the time when the journey of the digital age began. So another 100 years pass, and and we are in the digital age where I guess we'll, I don't know whether it's an industrial revolution, because theoretically it might not be an industrial revolution according to some people, but I believe that, the revolution is happening right now. We are experiencing it every day, and its magnitude is, to be honest, yet unknown. The digital age started in the dawn of the 3rd millennium with the one thing that every one of us uses every single day, and that's the internet. We can see the transition from the first industrial revolution to which rooted in the technological phenomenon all the way to this digital age. And in this digital age, we are now processing large volumes of data, developing worlds of virtual reality, this webinar itself is a virtual reality, which probably was not possible many years ago. So, and with this digital age, the internet, information is easily available and accessible. Information which used to be with people like managers, experienced people, and all of those things in the past ages, is actually no longer a big problem. Information is just a commodity, and knowledge is just a search away. I'm not sure whether you use Google or Yahoo or whatever, but it's just a search away. Okay, so, and also in this period, rapid constant and disruptive change is a norm. You know, we also can understand that what succeeded in the past is no longer a guide to what will succeed in the future. I'm not trying to copy from the hedge fund industry or the mutual fund industry, which talks about past performance is not an indicator of future performance. But the fact is, you know, what worked yesterday might not work today. So the key thing is 21st century managers simply don't, and to be honest, can't have all the answers. And on the contrary, the more younger and the junior the members are, or refer to them as Gen X, there is a possibility that more often than not, they are more aware of the new technological advancement. And by the way, if any of the people from my, work experience, people who have worked in my teams in the past are on the call, I'm sure they'll confirm that I am one of the dumbest technological person that they ever had. And that's true. So to cope with this new reality where hierarchical systems have become obsolete, we spoke about the Peters principle and why that also potentially informed this. There is a need for us to move away from this traditional command and control practices and towards something very different. A model in which leaders give support and guidance rather than instructions. They help employees, to adapt to this environment. This constantly changing environment is also giving lots of choices and options to people. So the question is, how do leaders help, their staff, their employees, their colleagues, everyone to maneuver through these, barrage of opportunities and options, more than opportunities, options. And also, how do they, create an environment, an ecosystem where, the young talent can unleash fresh energy, can constantly innovate, and also how do we nurture and nourish commitment from the people? I think these have become the important challenges for the leaders in this digital age. So in this digital age, hence, the commanding and pace setting type of leadership styles have just become ineffective. While many leaders might tend to disagree because that's a common, style which all of us tend to adapt, use, but that's ineffective. Affiliative and democratic styles obviously have become more important, but they're important across the organization, not just for few people who are on the top. And visionary leadership obviously continues to remain important in this changing landscape. And, though the time spans for visions might have shrinked, but it still remains a very, very important thing. So what is the major shift? I think the major shift is the role of a leader, in short, is basically becoming that of a coach. And this is a dramatic and fundamental shift that, I'll be very honest, I had to go through, and people would actually say that I'm still going through, which I think is correct. And I've observed this firsthand with many managers that I've worked with as a manager, as a colleague, as a coach in many different ways. So over the past decade, I've heard this from, many people, many of my team members, many of my clients, and this is what they're expected, they've basically told me that the leadership skills that they want to see are, all these things that we just spoke about, where managers are not instructing and rather than and helping create those types of innovative environments, all of those things. And this is something they want to cultivate in themselves as well. And so, so effective leaders, I feel, are people who help others think more broadly for themselves by sharing insightful reflections and asking powerful questions that disrupt and expand, people's mindsets. The most powerful way for a leader to change people's mindset is to help them to think more broadly, as I said, for themselves. And this is where the coaching approach, which will be useful. And coaching approach, simply put, is listening, reflecting on what you hear and sense, and then asking powerful questions to actually change how a person sees himself and the world around him. And these types of discoveries can actually lead to permanent and positive behavioral changes in people. Sounds very simple, but I guess that's where the challenge is also. And also, when I'm talking about coaching, I mean something broader than just, and again, I heard that there are lots of coaches in this webinar. So might sound not that positive for them, but the point I'm trying to say is, HR normally engages a lot of us as coaches, and by the way, I'm also a coach. So HR engages us as coaches, and typically during a situation where a senior leader or someone is having a performance issue, and the whole focus is on just helping the executive build their personal and professional skills. That work is important and sometimes vital, but it's actually temporary and executed by outsiders like, few of the coaches on this call. The coaching that I would like to talk about is the kind that creates a true learning organization, is ongoing and executed by those inside the organization. It's work that all leaders should engage in with all their people all the time in ways that help define the organization's culture and advance its vision and mission. So, an effective leader as a coach asks questions instead of providing answers, as we said, supports employees instead of judging them, and facilitates their development instead of dictating what has to be done. This conception of coaching represents an evolution. Coaching is no longer just a benevolent form of sharing what you know with somebody less experienced or less senior. Again, that obviously still remains as a valuable aspect, but that's not what I'm talking about. It's all about, it's a way of asking questions so as to spark insights in the other person. So as, Sir John Whitmore, who's a leading figure in this field, defined, skilled coaching involves unlocking people's potential to maximize their own performance. The best practitioners have mastered both parts of the process, which is imparting knowledge and helping others discover it themselves. And they can artfully do both in different situations. So this sounds simple, right? You have to just listen. You have to ask good questions. It sounds, very simple. So what is the challenge? And one of the main common challenge that leaders face in getting people to see the blind spots and points of resistance, that's what most leaders find difficult, is to make people see the blind spots and also make them see or notice the points of resistance, and how do you move the person internally forward. And obviously we already spoke, telling people what is wrong and telling people what they should do is an ineffective way of changing a behavior. Surely using threats and offering rewards for change, also don't give long-term results. So for leaders who are accustomed to telling people what to do, a coaching approach often feels too soft. What's more, it can make them, psychologically uncomfortable, because it deprives them of their most familiar management tool, which is asserting their authority. So obviously they'll find ways to resist it. They'll say things like, I'm busy, this is not the best use of my time, my people are not coachable, whatever that is. In fact, there's a study Daniel Goleman did as part of that, coming up with this, the leadership styles, where leaders ranked coaching as their least favorite style, and saying that it's simply waste of their time, and it's too slow, it's too tedious, and it's too tedious to see how to make people grow. And to be honest, there are some managers who are unenthusiastic about coaching, but they also think they are very good at coaching. So I would like to, share a typical performance management scenario. Uh, and, I've faced this with a lot of my managers where, if there is a performance management issue with one of the members in the team, I ask them, what would you like to do? And more often than not, 9 out of 10 people say that they would like to help the direct report do better. And here is how those typical conversations unfold. The executive begins with a very open-ended question, which is, how do you think things are going? And invariably, this question, elicits an answer which the manager or the executive is not expecting. So they reformulate the question few times, and more often than not, those reformulations also fail, which leads to frustration. And then they start asking questions like, don't you think your personal style would be better fit in a different role? And this puts the employee in a defensive mode. And eventually, feeling that the conversation is going nowhere, the executives switch to a tell mode to get their conclusion across. Does this sound, I guess this sounds familiar to a lot of us. If you're an HR professional, you keep hearing this from people. If you are a team member, this is how your managers treat you. If you're a manager, you can relate to this situation more often than not. So why does this happen? I honestly summarize this to just one thing, which is, old habits die hard. The primary reason is deep down, the managers, even before they went into the conversation, had a conclusion, knew what the right answer was. They were trying to do some things, but ultimately, it's just that we are all used to, the tell and sell type of things, commanding styles, assertive styles, and all of that. I think that's the fundamental thing for all of us as leaders. Actually, honestly, as coaches as well, I think we also struggle through that. And people, if some of, I'm sure Sat and Siri, who are on the call, who train a lot of people to become coaches, probably see this a lot. So the good news is, there are enough right tools and, sound methods, lots of practices, lots of good trainers. And through all of this, it's actually not that difficult to become a better coach, especially as a leader. And before we actually, I start talking and we start the Q&A, I would also like to share one final thought. At the start of the session, I mentioned that I'll go through the how leadership styles change and evolved over time by going through industrial revolution as the background. So hence, over the last 25, 30 minutes, we looked at leaders in the context of corporate leadership and corporate leaders. But according to me, another key thing to take away is that everything we spoke is not just applicable to us in the corporate leadership or in the corporate context, but it's actually applicable to us in all walks of life. Obviously, we spoke about professional, but it's actually important even in our personal lives, in our social lives. Think of, how, if I have to think about how my father or my mother as parents used to deal with me, those style of parenting just does not work with my kids in the current information age. Things have changed. So I would like to actually throw the thought that thinking and operating as coaches is not just relevant in a professional sense, but it's actually relevant for us in all walks of life, be it as a parent, as a husband or wife, or as a daughter or a son, friend, relative, you name any role. So gone are the days when information and knowledge was known to few people and people were happy to just do things as they were told. That world is changed. So in summary, the key thing that I want to throw out for all of us is, in this important digital age where a lot of things are going through, in all walks of our life, it's very important that all of us start embracing coaching as a way forward for us to become effective leaders, but effectively just good human beings. you know, that's pretty much what I wanted to share. And I would like to open up it for questions from people.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sharath, for sharing the insights. And of course, what you shared, like right in the end, it's not just leaders in the corporate world, it's leaders everywhere. And each one of us has to be a leader, right? So that's, of course, very important. Couple of points which you made, one especially about the the Peter principles, where employees rise to their level of incompetence. It's I've been an HR professional for like long years, and I think I completely agree to it. When we are given the when we create the career path of an employee, and it says 2 years as executive and then 2.5 years or 3 years as senior executive, and it just keeps rolling on from there. And at certain level, they automatically rise to their level of incompetence, and it creates unnecessary tension in the employees as well as everyone around. And thereby, there's a lot of discontentment as well. So, couple of questions that people have, Sharath, is one, Krishna asked is, why is 6 leadership style exclusive? Shouldn't a good leader be the right blend of all of them?
Oh, absolutely. I guess there is no question about whether all the leadership styles do play their part and are useful in different situations. In fact, that's why I started off by saying these are the 6 leadership styles, and each of the style is relevant in a particular situation. And if those situations arise, as a good leader, it will be great to employ those styles. I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't assert authority at all, but the purpose of bringing all those 6 leadership styles and is about talking about how the relevance of some of those styles has changed over time. If you see the commanding and pace setting and authoritative styles were were very useful in the first and second industrial revolution, when hierarchical systems were also true or were also very important and relevant. As time changes, might be they are not as useful, and hence bringing those 6 leadership styles. And the main point of the whole thing was to bring about and say that in the current digital age, it's very important that we all start looking at coaching as one of the leadership styles, which we all need to adopt to for this age.
Okay, fair enough. So while people have to have all leadership styles depending on the kind of situation that is there, and of course it's with the times, like you said, you also mentioned that knowledge has just become a commodity and knowledge is available everywhere. So people have to adapt to a different leadership style, and not just the commanding leadership style, which is so ingrained in almost every one of us. So that leads to another question, which says that how do you actually help a person change from commanding leadership style to a coaching leadership style? And how can we actually do by the willingness of the person to change their leadership style?
Okay, good. So I guess I'll take these questions effectively, potentially coming from 2 different types of people. Okay. So first is potentially coming from a coach who is trying to coach a person to get into this style. And I'll take a second question, which is for someone like me, who was an engineer and who thought I had all the knowledge, I had to just tell people. And I've gone through a journey of being a commanding, pace setting, command and control type of a manager to look at using other styles. So the question could come from an individual like me who is going through that difficulty of changing from this style to that style. So I'll take that as 2 questions. Let me take the second question first, which is, if you're an individual who's realized and going through the journey of wanting to change from a command and control style to a coaching style, I think the primary thing in that one is the last slide I left it, which is I think still on the screen, which is you need to commit to it, you need to embrace it, and you need to start realizing that. And the reason why you're even asking this question would be because you're realizing that you are no longer being as effective leader as you were in the past. So I think the primary thing that you need to do is just embrace that this is a new style that you need to work on and adopt. And coming to the first question, which is, if you are a coach trying to put someone through that journey, then I think it's actually, as a coach, you will have to put the person through a journey of, I would say, what got you here won't get you their journey. Okay. I think for the leader, the resistance is, I have been successful with what I have done so far. And why am I not successful? And why will I not be successful with my current style, which is the commanding style? So I think as a coach, I think the primary thing that will potentially help is putting the person through the journey of showing, how what got you here won't get you there. And hence you'll have to potentially, show the person more of, what is required in the future, what the person wants to become in the future, and why a coaching style will be surely helpful to get there.
Okay. So while you're saying that what got you here will not get you there, and you also mentioned during your presentation that there's a lot of psychological discomfort that people face when changing, and any kind of a change is very difficult for people. So not just from one leadership style to the other. Of course, in this coaching and a lot of other knowledge, training, and probably just a lot of self-awareness will also play a lot of role in helping people change, and their buy-in that yes, it's time to change and it's the need of the hour, of course.
And by the way, I just forgot to add one thing. You just bring them and leave them with prosperity. Compliment prosperity,
by that, but
it's a huge compliment.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, go on.
So moving on. So the next question would be, what is the most important trait for a leader as a coach in an informal conversation?
I would say demonstrating those things like, listening and all of those things, and, being with the person, bringing those insights. But I think the biggest trait I feel would be to make the person feel as if you are a good friend.
Okay. To make the person feel as if you're a good friend. And of course, that means that you have to genuinely care about the other person as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we have a couple of other questions. Should we go ahead or it's time? So how do you want to do it? You want to close now, or can we take a couple of other questions?
I have time, depends on,
okay.
other.
Okay, let's just.
Looks like most people have dropped off.
So we can take one or two questions more, prosperity.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So, so there is one person who says that today there is a lot of knowledge which is readily available to a team member. How does the leader exercise coaching style and have the team members to trust them? Because, so let me read out the full thing, and I think that will make more sense. As a Gen X myself, there is a tendency to not trust the leadership style of new leaders until they prove themselves. Proving themselves would have been relatively easy with the commanding and pace-setting style, as they had to do was demonstrate knowledge. But today, knowledge is readily available. So how does leaders exercising the coaching style have the team members trust them as leaders?
Okay, that's a beautiful question. So I heard this as someone, a question coming from a Gen X, and the challenge for the Gen X on, how do I trust a leader till they don't demonstrate the knowledge, but knowledge is easily available. That's a beautiful question. It's almost like a very,
it's just like,
yeah. So in fact, that's a very interesting challenge which all leaders are going through in most organizations today, where even the current Gen X, which is, is not yet into a futuristic thing like, some of my kids who are 10 and 12 years old. They've also, the current Gen X, with people who are in their 20s-ish, are people who have gone through a generation where they have lived their life with parents, with elders around who were command and control, who were good at telling this is what you're supposed to do. Obviously, the Gen X might not have, thought that that's the right thing, but the environment changed over the last 10, 15 years where, the people have gone through a command and control style where they want to be told, or they were used to getting told. And hence the question is a very tricky one. And for the Gen X, it's actually for them to also start embracing this art of coaching, where they have to be very clear on what they want to get from the leader. It's not instructions. So if the trust is going to be gained by the Gen X, by the leader proving that they know all the knowledge that the individual or the Gen X knows, then that approach itself is wrong. Okay, the Gen X also needs to start realizing what is it that I actually can get out of this person who has got more experience. Okay, so I'll give a classic example which I have gone through where, as I said, a lot of my team members know a lot about newer technologies than I would know, and that's a given. But they don't have the experience of building an enterprise application, which or enterprise scale things, which, which have worked for 10 years, which have worked for 20 years. Okay. That's the type. So obviously it's a leader also behaving in that way where, you are trying to demonstrate and help people with those things by asking those questions and not telling those things, saying this is wrong. Okay. And it's also for the Gen X to be open to start realizing, okay, what are the things that I actually have to learn from this person, which is not obviously available through my Google search. Okay. And that's when you will start building and gaining trust. So it's a very, very, very good question asked by the Gen X.
Thank you. Thanks for asking the question. And so it's the last question that I'll ask you. How does the leader ensure in this case that, when you're actually not in a command and control kind of an environment, how does the leader ensure that the solution, whatever they're arriving at together, will be implemented?
I guess so. Okay. Again, this will go into a lot of trying to teach someone how to become a coach. A coach's job is, once you become a coach, you will realize that it's not just about getting an insight and then leaving the person. Then the coach's job is also to ask people, okay, how will you implement this insight? What will you do? So there is a lot of inbuilt planning in the approach of a coach, honestly, more often than not, or that's the time where you are actually using your pace setting leadership style. Absolutely you should use. So whether you want to call it using a pace setting leadership style or using your coaching style, I think what the question is fundamentally about, how do I also get people to deliver results? And that's also possible. So instead of saying, do it today, you can even ask a simple question. So by when will you get it done? And if the person gives an answer, which is like 1 year later, then you can ask a very simple question and say, do you think getting it done a year later is going to be the best thing that you can do? Okay. So I think as a coach, a job of a coach is not just about having, conversations without getting results. In fact, the most successful coaches are people who can get the real end results. And it's just a different style of asking the same question about do it by tomorrow versus by when will you get it done, are the two separate questions. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And thank you, everyone, also for being very patient. There was an error in the link that I had sent today, so there was a lot of people saying that there is an error and they were not able to join. So apologies from my side, and sure many more would have joined if there was not have been an error in the link. Siri, you have something to say.
So I think, thank you, Sharat, for giving us a very beautiful insight. I can just add one thing which I have understood in so many years of my working with people. It's like if you see at home, your parents have a lot of experience, and they talk about it, and sometimes, especially I can talk about myself, being into this line and moving towards spirituality and doing a lot of other things. So when my parents tell me, Siri, you need to do this, I say, look, Dad, I know it better than you because I'm doing something which I've been doing for so many years. Saying like that, if you put it in the perspective of a leader at a house, it doesn't sound so good because he is the head of the family. But saying in a way, even learning for me has been that, okay, Dad, I understand that's been your experience. But today it's a little different because probably what you know and what I know, my younger generation even knows it much better. But yes, your experience was right at your time, and probably mine is going to be a little more advanced. And if I want to share with you, would you like to have a, would you like to understand what the life is all about, what I'm seeing through my eyes and my lens of my vision, what I'm seeing it through? So that's my learning, and coaching few leaders, and also have been, I think, a really wonderful time that when they have, which you rightly very said, Sharad, that it's about the way you put the question. It's not about just saying that this is my way and you do it this way, but saying, okay, this has been my way. So, what do you think if this way could work for you, or if you have a better choice? Probably we can look at that also. So, that could be one of the best coaching styles, and very well said, Sharat. I think it was so beautiful to hear you. Thank you so much. You've been one of our very wonderful innermost shift coaches. Keep coaching people, keep doing good, keep sharing your insights. We would love it. And probably some people who have missed it, as Prosperity said. So maybe let's see in the round when we are moving around the whole circle of webinars, in case we need to get back to you once again. So probably we'll see if we can do that as well. Thank you so much, all of you. It's been a wonderful time uh, to have you along with us. Thank you, Prosperity. You were a wonderful moderator. I really loved the way you put the questions to Saraswati. That was quite insightful. This has been an initiative from Alpha Stars, incited by Prosperity, and I think we are doing pretty good. So, though it's a second seminar, but I think it's really, really wonderful. So, hope to see you all of you next time as well. Please remain alert on your mails. And so if you have received the mail already from Prosperity and somehow you don't get it, every Friday, Prosperity, yes, we have a session from some of our coach.
Yes, every Friday.
Yes, every Friday. So in case you fail to receive a mail or any message, you please respond on the support ID. We will send you the link once again. So thank you so much. Take care. Stay
Thank
safe.
you.
Stay
Have a nice
home.
weekend.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.